never ever since I came here, it was 4 years, I didn't have any nostalgia about Russia. It's really stunned me. I was thinking, something wrong with you, you have to miss something. It's very difficult to understand what it was like in Russia 10, 15 years ago. Now it's very different Russia. It is a different country. I left another country. It's a completely different culture now. I was so upset with Soviets that I was thinking, no, I would never go there. Then time passed, you know, and I became much more quieter. And I felt that I could go back, and I did, and I'm glad I came.
My country is a very, very strange country with big culture, just because maybe of this negative sides of our awful civilization.
Властям было очень неудобно, что сын такого известного человека в стране и такого, в общем, ну, известного композитора хочет покинуть эту страну.
It was brutal thing not to let somebody who's well known go, and of course everybody else in the Soviet Union will get the message that it's dangerous to apply for immigration.
It was a normal situation in everyday life when we never expect phone calls from friends, and we never insisted. And sometimes people who wanted to say hello to us, they were calling from the phone in the streets.
We invited him to play a concert at our house, which was very well received. It was a wonderful concert, and after that he played 3 more.
His standards were high enough so that he didn't come to play at our house until we had a decent piano.
He first came over as the hero of what we may all hope was one of the last of the Cold War dramas.
Я отключаю телефон каждый день, потому что мне звонят с утра до вечера и просят помочь с билетом. Билетов нету.
Someone did say to me, you know, it takes someone leaving and coming back, you know, to sell out a hall like this, but fine, whatever it takes.
I never made it big in Russia. I made it good, but not big. But if I would want to make it big in Russia, I would have to play their game, support their politics. You have to be a representative of the Soviet ideology and Soviet art and so forth. And that was why I just reached a certain point in my life. I was 26 years old, and I woke up and I told myself, no, this is it. This line you will not cross. You have to get hell out of here as soon as you can. Unfortunately, it took me 8 years.
Несколько часов назад в Шереметьево приземлился самолет. Владимир Фельтсман в Москве. Владимир Фельтсман у нас в программе.
I'm a Russian Jew, and any Jewish musicians of any stature got their leaks from the system. It was very cultural thing, and anti-Semitism, unfortunately, is very deep inside Russian culture. Before me, most of the musicians, they just let them go. I was the first visible musician which they said no. And so I was sort of an example for different musicians, for my other colleagues, that look at Feltsman, look at his life, think twice before you do anything wrong.
Оптимистично вперед, хотя я не очень уверен, что это будет все легко.
Легко не будет, и я хочу вам напомнить ваше прошлое. Можно?
He'd won several prizes in Paris and in Prague, so they were very proud of him, and they didn't want him.
It was in the fall of 1978. Volodya called me and he said that he is planning on immigrating from the Soviet Union.
At the beginning, Volodya didn't feel even physically very well. He needed the help, and so his position started to be better because journalists started to write about him.
He had gotten into extraordinary difficulty with the then Soviet government, and he had essentially become an unperson, that he was unable to perform except in very limited circumstances.
I mean, he had his tires slashed, phone calls made in the middle of the night, lots of very nasty things that could have been threatening physically.
It's dangerous to apply for immigration because you can lose everything and still will remain inside of the country.
Many organizations helped us.
That's
Jewish organizations and politicians and ambassadors and presidents. Without that, we wouldn't manage to get out of the country at that time.
He came over on such a wave of ballyhoo that I don't think anyone could have lived up to the sort of reception he was given.
He was brought to me by a number of people. There were a lot of people involved with Volodya before, and I think he probably didn't even know these people. There were a lot of people involved, starting with Simon Pinkasov, his cousin. And Simon is probably one of the greatest entrepreneurs, friends, relatives, and just organizers that I've ever met. He mobilized so many different people to get Volodya out of the Soviet Union.
I think my first contact with the person who was very helpful getting Volodya and his family out of Russia, I met because of fencing. There was a fundraising party on Long Island where I was invited to participate as a fencer. I was introduced to a very well-built young man who recognized my accent and began to ask me if I knew anybody who is in difficult situation in Russia because they applied for immigration. And I told him that there will be one. By the way, everybody became very excited when he left me. People came to me and asked me, do you know who he was? I said, no. And they said, well, that was Jack Kemp. And I said, that's nice, who is Jack Kemp? So they told me, you don't know who's Jack Kemp? He's a congressman from Buffalo, and he began to work at Congress. And then eventually went to Moscow. So in part, I think Volodya owes Jack Kemp his release from the Soviet Union. I felt very close to Volodya and his family. He's a part of my childhood. He's a part of my family. I thought it was a great injustice done to Volodya. I had no experience in public relations at all. What I did was the natural thing to do. You go out, you call, you bother people, you call again, you follow up, you remember, you constantly remind about this case.
It's ridiculous to call somebody who was a non-person in the Soviet Union, call that, having a lucky break. But he did get a lucky break in America. I mean, he played his first American concert at the White House. Reagan did not show a profound interest in classical music, let's face it. And so this guy goes to the White House, and then he gets the big enchilada, the Carnegie Hall sold-out concert. I remember I was, at the time, a little bit skeptical, and I said that he was very good, but he was no Vladimir Feltsman.
Frankly, when I first met Volodya, I said, you're going to go through culture shock. And he didn't believe me, and he did.
But how could you prevent this from happening? The only chance to get him out of it, to make him a celebrity. To make him celebrity, you need media, you need press.
Который вас сейчас занимает более
It's
всего?
very easy to get spoiled by attention. In words, he was very smart. He separated immediately. He said, yes, this is political fame. I would like people to forget about politics. I would like them to listen the way I play and like it. And that's my ultimate goal. I think he was saying that, but also he kind of liked that attention which was coming on him like a waterfall.
Должен что-то доказывать. Когда я приехал в Америку, у меня было большое имя, но оно было сделано на политике, как бы никто меня не слышал. И уже репутация и имя было достаточно высоким, поэтому я как бы должен выйти был на сцену Карнеги-холла и доказать, что я, значит, могу,
Пианист.
тем не менее, играть на рояле еще, плюс ко всем остальным моим, значит, качествам. И здесь, приехав сюда несколько лет, спустя несколько лет, я опять-таки должен доказывать здесь, что я как бы соответствую той репутации, которая мне следует. То есть опять надо доказывать. Ну, такая моя доля, значит, придется доказывать.
Ну что ж, удачного вам доказательства.
Спасибо.
А сейчас...
Marketing an artist is such a strange thing. Musical literacy is at such a low level these days that anything that catches the public's attention, you want to go with. And there's no doubt that he was really a genuine hero over there. He fought for what he believed in, and he suffered the consequences. I still think that he may have been heralded for the wrong reasons, but I'm now quite convinced that he's a very fine artist.
He grew up the way I think a lot of the great Soviet musicians grew up, whether he wanted to or not. I mean, if we were to say to him, is this the life you really want? He'd say, of course. But in reality, considering it was spoon-fed to him, very much, I guess, like the Suzuki method in a sense in Japan is spoon-fed, he didn't have a choice. This is what, I mean, whether he was going to be a jazz musician or a classical musician, maybe that was his choice, but no doubt he was going to be a musician. I don't think he's sorry about that today, although maybe Sigmund Freud could figure that out.
It was 2-3 buildings, one block, which has been built by the order of Stalin, of course. At that block lived at the same time Khachaturian, Shostakovich, Kabalevsky, Rostropovich, many others. And my father also had an apartment in that building. It was a co-op building. So I was brought up from the age 3 or 4, just knowing all these people all my life. My father was a composer, and he composed very popular melodies, which are like folk melodies now. And he made very big name and career inside Soviet Union. And he played all ideological games, obviously, which any of his colleagues did.
Никуда мне не деться от этого. Ночь за окном, на дворе никого. Только к утру станет зорькой рассветною. Остров детства, детства моего. С детством расстаться всегда очень грустно. Белый кораблик уплыл, не вернешь. Воспоминаний светлое чувство станет сильнее, чем дольше живешь. И никуда.
I had a very privileged childhood, I have to say. Yeah. I was born in '52, when Stalin was still in power. So for people of the generation of my father, it was almost inconceivable that some of them, or their father, brother, or wife, or somebody of their family would not get arrested or killed. I mean, it was surreal, but it was real. It was very real.
Остров детства моего.
My mother, she studied as well as my father in the Moscow Conservatory, so they're both professional musicians. But basically my mother gave up her career for my sake. She was my first teacher, and she did work in a kindergarten teaching kids music. My parents had this room. It was not even an apartment room in a common flat, and I was born there, and the kitchen and the bathroom they share with other families, and we lived there 3 or 4 years. And then they moved at this present apartment.
Это огромное было счастье, потому что мы получили комнату.
Это первая комната в жизни.
Да, общая кухня. Юра
Знаешь,
Левитин
почему
жил
получили?
наверху.
Потому что пришел один руководитель Москвы на премьеру моей первой опереты.
И дал тебе комнату.
И да, ему понравилось. И кто это такой? Вот этот мальчик написал.
Ага.
Ну, дать ему комнату.
Тебе дали комнату.
Дали комнату.
Это было при Сталине еще.
Это было при Иосифе Виссарионовиче, да.
При отце народа.
Всех народов, да.
И квартира, в которой мы сейчас живем.
Ну, она была, этот дом был выстроен по указу Сталина.
По указу Сталина.
Да, я знаю.
We have in this apartment which we are now, we have 2 pianos always. It was my father's piano and my piano. And so our neighbors, I guess, were not too happy because it was a lot of music, very different kind of, because my father was light pop music and I was damn serious. My father was not very handy handling me, but that was one of the rare photo opportunities when he took me in his arms and he overcame his fear to handle me.
Ну вот, смотри, он меня брал на руки.
Ужасно испуганно. Только для фотографий.
Volodya didn't belong to the Soviet Union from the beginning. He was westernized by his birth. He was exposed to information from the West from very early. He read books on philosophy. He was traveling abroad himself when he was a child, actually. As a musician, he knew he could compare to society. He didn't belong there. He was Western in everything, the way he talked, the way he walked, the way the clothes he had, the music he played, the way he played. He was showing everybody, I'm not with you.
When he asked to emigrate, and even before that, things had started to happen to him. He had wanted to accept an invitation which he'd received to play in Japan. He knew that he had other invitations and that the cultural authorities who controlled his life were denying him these opportunities. Then, of course, as soon as he applied to leave, they cut him off completely. And the concerts that he did get were intended to do him in. He was asked, for example, to go and play at a factory somewhere near the Urals, where only a few children and their teachers showed up, the piano quite out of tune.
And they never stopped the machines in the factory.
That too.
Another time he was trying out a piano and played a couple of chords and all the insects flew out from inside.
I mean, it was really a Kafka drama. I mean, these people could be very mean. The export of culture was totally in the hands of the KGB. And when they put their minds to it, they could be very nasty.
Did you have reservations about even doing this whole thing?
Yeah, a lot. Why I agree of doing that? Soviets were approaching me smoothly, as they thought, for 2 last years.
The official?
Yes, official. And I said absolutely no. I was not interested to deal with any official Soviet establishment. So this gentleman, Boris Rosen, is not an official establishment. It's a small private agency, and the guy I used to study with, you know, at the same class in Moscow Conservatory. So I felt much more comfortable.
Мой отец импресарио, он сейчас уже, так сказать, пожилой, он не работает. И я думаю, что это наследственное. Когда я увидел и почувствовал на себе тяжесть, это неимоверно сложные условия этой работы в нашей стране, и увидел, как к нам относятся те люди, которым было дано право руководить организациями, отвечающими за гастрольную жизнь, у меня невольно возникло желание самому попробовать и попытаться что-то сделать, чтобы артисты, музыканты почувствовали себя в нашей стране людьми и получали радость и удовольствие от того, что они приносят людям.
Orchestra concert, which I got a chance to play whatever I wanted or liked, and I, in a way, wanted to make a point that I'm not typical Russian musicians who are playing Prokofiev, Liszt, Rachmaninoff, and Tchaikovsky. So my repertoire is a little different. I chose 3 pieces. It was Bach, SCHNITTKE, and Mozart. Obsessed with German and Austrian music, and I love it more than anything else in life, probably. This is the most valuable music structurally, formally, spiritually, culturally. It has been written. By all definition, it is a spiritual activity, and very intensive one.
Я заплатил оркестру 3 гонорара сверх того, что они официально получают от своего руководства. Иначе они не соглашались играть. Были длительные переговоры. И в итоге, когда я наконец сказал и взял на себя все расходы, лично, что я заплачу, вот только тогда мне удалось договориться, чтобы предоставили эти залы люди, которые сейчас занимают большие должности в филармонии, и которые не имеют к искусству никакого отношения, и которые только мешают. Из-за них, собственно, и из-за их какой-то косности, непонимания, многие выдающиеся музыканты лишены возможности играть в большом зале, в малом зале.
ALFRED SCHNITTKE's Concerto for Piano and String Orchestra. I learned in late 70s, I think it was 79. It was the whole evening of his music and I was the soloist. And since that time we got very, very friendly, really. He was sort of underground leader, avant-garde composer, dissident reputation. He was in trouble much earlier than I started my troubles. Not only him, but the whole group of composers, because they started what we call now the second Russian avant-garde in music, which didn't fit well in rigid frames of Soviet ideology, and they had it very hard, really. ALFRED scored hundreds of movies. That was the way how he was making his living. So on top of that, he composed serious music. SCHNITTKE, from my point of view, is the greatest living composer in the world. We got friendly, myself and Viktor Yerofeev, which we saw, my dear friend, who is the most successful Russian writer at that time. So it was three of us who were sort of trying to support each other, and we have been in trouble in our own way, each of us.
Me, I made this underground collection of contemporary works of Soviet writers, and so I had my punishment. They expelled me from the Writers' Union, and I could not publish my works anymore. When I work it, I never thought that it will be published, or here, or even in the West, during many, many years. I wrote what I wanted to write, and so I was free in a completely unfree country. But there was a difference between us, because he wanted to emigrate, and so it was his only hope, immigration, and so he'll start the new life. And I didn't want to immigrate. My family situation was completely different, because if his father didn't support him at that time, his son immigrate, then my father, at some level, he supported me in my awful situation. I mean that he didn't do anything against me, even if there is a big pressure on him to say that I'm no longer his son. Even so,
we know that he and his father did not agree on anything. Everything from musical taste to attitude toward the regime, toward compromise, because there isn't anybody in that society who doesn't compromise in some way, and some more than others. And I think Volodya felt that his father compromised too much.
Когда мой сын решил уехать из страны, мне сказали, что я должен написать бумагу. И мне вроде по-дружески сказали так, что если я напишу такую бумагу, что я запрещаю ему уезжать, тогда у меня в жизни будет все хорошо, все в порядке. А если я напишу такую бумагу, что я не возражаю против его отъезда, мне дальше будет очень трудно.
My father was a big shot at that time. He was ambassador to Vienna, and so because of me, because of my activities, he lost his job. And I think that Volodya's father also was under the pressure and also had this danger not to lose his job as a composer, but just to be outside the public audiences and everything, you know. And so he was afraid, and he did, as I think, he did everything that they asked him to do.
He's not a very brave person. I like him very much. He's very, very gifted composer, and he's my father. I love him and all that. But his character, he's not the bravest man in the history of the world. And also, you know, for the people who went through Stalin time, and they're not, some of them, you know, got real scared and frightened the rest of their life. So my father was very nervous and anxious about me doing that, and you know, he wanted to protect himself in a way that he will not lose his career or his standing, which I cannot blame him really, because you know, that's life.
He is, and many people are products of the system. Sometimes people didn't want to be in touch with us because it was punished by government. One very famous composer at the time, he is already passed away, he saw us in the country, at the countryside where we stayed in the country house, where, and he just jumped into the snow. He didn't know where to go. He was ready to run into the woods, not to say hello to us, even if we were on the empty road. We had very interesting life in Moscow. And looking back, I must say that those years were dark, and at the same time, they were the brightest years of my life. We met a lot of people, interesting people. And we had wonderful evenings, and we knew all ambassadors in Moscow, we knew all diplomats, and we knew all correspondents. So we could maintain certain level of life there. Our roles were quite different. I was playing a role of the representative of the family mostly, and communicating with people, and his task was to play piano well. This is the thing he's doing. I handle all events and all interviews and wrote the letters, and it was a big job.
We were there at a concert that Volodya gave in a very tiny room, which was their whole apartment. They had maybe 16 congressmen and some journalists, and people were sitting all huddled up in the corner. And with all of that, Anya was able to produce a whole lot of food and serve it in a very gracious way. It was quite charming that
I think
evening.
she was a great asset to him in supporting him with the public, I mean, which she was very good at. She always managed to have help for the child, so there were really 4 people in that apartment most of the time. And then when he really wanted to get away and be alone and be with his thoughts and practice and do the kinds of things that he felt he had to do, he went to the country. He went to his father's dacha.
Тоня, открывайте дверь. Привет, красавица. Привет.
Volodya he's not a recluse, but he's someone who really likes to do more thinking than socializing. And he likes his privacy. If he could play a concert, get into the car, go right back to the house, that would be ideal for him. He self-admittedly says that when he first got here, he was quite arrogant, which he was. He would storm out of some of these parties or not even show up to some of the parties that presenters really needed him for to help with their boards of directors and things. When I was with him or when Simon was with him, we kind of helped him and he was okay. The thing is that he's really a multifaceted type person.
Sometimes he sounds very, very smart and very wise, but more often than that, he is naive. He is naive. His expectations of people are unreasonable. On many, many occasions, I used to write him, there is no difference between what you will do here in New York and somebody who sells soap. You're selling. You sell your talent. They sell soap, right? So you have to make people want to buy your talent. He has to make people to buy his soap. He thought he will not have a cultural shock, and he thought he knew what to expect.
He's explaining that it's the first prize, we can bargain. He invited me to bargain.
In New York, he was passing by the store and he saw looked like Fabergé eggs. He came and he said, he asked a salesman, "Is this Fabergé?" You could smell a paint while you were talking to that person. And he said, "Of course it's a Fabergé eggs." So immediately he left $3,000 in the store. I mean, this was outrageous. But listen, yes, they took advantage of him, definitely. But also he should know better sometimes.
Very strange. My country is completely different from what we had 5 years ago. Now everybody works for himself because of this new market system. Now everything you hear, people want to sell, to buy. And that's why the time of revolution or the time of this economic change is not the best time for culture. People, they have crazy life now. They don't know what to do. Their life is difficult, you know, absurd. It's necessary to stand in lines. So you don't have time to read, to go to concerts. And so if you want to do something, if you want to listen to some music, if you want to read some book, you try to choose the only one, the best one.
I hope that Moscow Conservatory will stay as a school, as an entity in this new Russia or whatever, because it was and still is in a way one of the very best musical schools in the world. Now it's very messy there, because they lost sponsorship of the government or state or whatever you call it, which has been in my time absolutely automatically. Any orchestra has been on a payroll, and whatever money you need, anything you want, they would get. Now it is changing. As I see it, a lot of groups and orchestra will just collapse, maybe. Now it's 7 orchestras in Moscow, which is absurd, because they don't need 7 symphony orchestra, but it is 7 and a 3 or 4 chamber orchestra. The musician cannot make their living there. They are making their living only when they toured abroad and they save these few bucks which they're getting as a day allowance, some small fees, and then on that they can live. And it's a very sad story, but unfortunately it was the case even in my time when I was active there. And it's even more now.
Люди уезжают, причем я теряю замечательных друзей, замечательных музыкантов. И, в общем, мне обидно, когда мы выезжаем на гастроли во все страны Европы и Соединенных Штатов. Везде мои друзья, все замечательные музыканты, которые, в общем-то, вынуждены были по разным причинам, как Владимир Фельтсман.
All of the bad times in the Soviet Union are going to have an effect. It may be a temporary effect on their ability to produce talent in the way that they used to. And this goes for musical talent, performing talent, sport talent, all the things that were favored by the old regime because it was good to show what communist society could do.
In the Soviet Union, for a long time, there has been this emphasis on the star and the sort of muscles and aggression. And so you may get more dazzling musicians from the Soviet Union, but are they more searching musicians? Well, I don't know. There was a certain style that was brought out by the Moscow Conservatory and brought out by that way of teaching. I mean, I'm stereotyping wildly here, but it's a legitimate stereotype. It tends to be very aggressive and goal-oriented and very flashy. What I think is interesting about Feltsman is that even though he comes from the Soviet Union and he was very much a product of that teaching, he has very little in common with your standard Soviet-made pianist.
Что я вернулся на родину, точно знаю. Спасибо. Все это же самое, да. Это торопливо. Слушай.
активная, это должна быть как бормашина в мозг, эта трель. То есть вот такой более формальный, отстраненный подход ко всему этому делу. Следите за динамикой, следите за ритмом, за дикцией. И как бы меньше вкладывайте в это эмоциональности, потому что эта музыка, она как бы настолько сама по себе работает, если вы делаете ее правильно, если вы следуете тому, что написано, то как бы ваше к этому отношение и ваша личность абсолютно неинтересна. Здесь уже все есть. Поэтому, когда будете играть Шопена или Шумана, там можно вкладывать и проявлять свои божественные данные и способности. В этой музыке этого не требуется просто, там уже все проявлено. Все, спасибо.
He's really rather a cerebral artist, indeed something of a modernist. Very, very thoughtful and rather cool and very self-aware. We have this idea of the tempestuous Russian from the Volga who comes here and throws his hair all around and plays these killer Liszt pieces and Scriabin, and that's really not what Feltsman's about.
Дело в том, что цены на билеты устанавливает филармония. И как я не пытался убедить, что любое мероприятие, и даже такое, как концерт выдающегося музыканта, должно приносить какую-то еще прибыль. Никогда нельзя сбрасывать со счетов финансовое положение и финансовую заинтересованность. Они сказали, что максимально, за сколько можно продавать билеты, это 8 рублей. Дороже не купят. И, как правило, приезжают выдающиеся музыканты, и когда нет билетов, люди предлагают 2-3 цены. И я уверен, что у Володи было бы то же самое.
Начинаем концерт Владимира Фельтсмана, Соединенные Штаты Америки.
I really sincerely, honestly feel when I play great music that it is not Vladimir Feltsman, that my personality, whatever you call it, doesn't matter at all. It is not interesting. It's something which is happening, hopefully, which is coming through me, through this music, through all this interaction, which matters. And I'm trying not to spoil it. I believe that interpretation is one level, but I believe that there is another level which I can name realization, which is much higher than interpretation. I think that Mozart, as Beethoven, Bach, has been sort of a medium or retranslator of a certain energy. We can call it Holy Ghost, Spirit of God, whatever. I don't care about the names. But something definitely much bigger than he. We're coming through him, and we're finding the structure in sound through his hand. So he was writing something under the dictation of God. interpreters, let's say, or realizators, have a unique opportunity through that music to get to the resource of that energy which were driving Mozart to write down which he did. And when it is happening, it is the highest reward any musician can get. I think any musician has a certain feeling of the public. It's exchange. You give and you receive. It was tension at the beginning in Moscow because they have been very cautious toward me. You know, what the hell happened with Vladimir Feltsman, which they used to know. At the beginning it was a little cold, but then I think that I warmed them up. I was brought up there. I mean, I will always be a part of it. But oddly enough, I think that I understand and feel Russian culture much more clearly than I used to when I was inside it. So the fact that I left it gave me a distance to look at it. I think that finally I have a life which I always were looking for. I always wanted to live in a country, and finally I found this house, and it was very important psychological decision, you know, because I never wanted to live in New York somehow. I was never happy. I don't know, I think that I'm pretty self-efficient guy, you know. I feel very comfortable being alone at all, I mean, with nobody. Here in this house, I have nice books, good library. Somehow I was always interested in this spiritual matter, in the religion, Jewish, of course, and in Christianity, in Buddhism, Islam, you know, Tantra. I tell you, I bought my first Torah, my first Bible, when I was 15 years old on a black market for 50 rubles. It was not available. It was not available. So I got it, then I got Agada and some other stuff. You know, I was so hungry for getting certain information on that subject, on Kabbalah, for example, which I always was interested, but it was not available in Russian language, and very few English books was available.
In 1986, I was actually on my way to Russia. And so I said, I will drop in on Vladimir Feltsman, and I will issue him a letter of invitation. Now, I knew perfectly well that he was not free to leave the Soviet Union, but one lives in hope. But then when the SUNY trustees were persuaded to offer him a distinguished professorship here, I think our initial focus was more on the performing than on the teaching. And as it has turned out, I must say our gamble was correct, because he is a superb teacher.
Very good, but why slow down? Second time, no.
I was on the faculty when Vladimir first came in '87. And the people who came here to the master classes, we just felt that this was something very, very special. And over the years, particularly through the master classes, I think a group has grown together. There's a lot of warmth here, a lot of friendship, and I think that it is very mutual.
I can't get that transition.
It has to be, you know, all beautiful romantic crap which exists in the world has to be here.
That used to exist in the world.
Well, it is. I think that if I would never get out of Russia and if I would never get known or played or do recording, I still would be a musician. But for any musician, it's absolutely obvious. The music is a temporary art. It happens and then it's gone. So for me to be able to play for people, to be able to make some records, it's must, because otherwise it is not happening. The human life is a matter of time too. I just lost 8 years of my life, and for a concert piano player, 8 years, it's a lot of time. But I used these years and I have learned a lot of music. I was able to work very hard, to go very, very deep in a certain musical issues like Bach and Beethoven. And it didn't break me because of the music. My first season in this country, I played hundreds of concerts to get things to move fast. I think that I overestimated myself maybe, because you have to be in a certain mental state when you can play your best. I don't know anything else in my life except music. I just want to do certain things in life as a musician, which I have to do, which I believe that I was born to do it. But there is no goal. The process of moving is a goal. Something is growing, hopefully, inside you, and you're getting there. But there is no goal. It's only a journey, you're just moving.